Hello, everyone. Jason. We're going to be getting started in just a few minutes, so please hold and look forward to speaking. Thank you again for joining. I'm noticing the attendee number trickling up, so I'm going to give it one more minute, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I appreciate your patience, but we'll get started very soon. I think we can go ahead and get started. I appreciate everybody's attendance today. We've got a lot to cover. As everybody continues to drill in, I figure I'll get started and at least introduce the presentation to you and go through some keeping items. So again, I appreciate everybody's time today. My name is Jason Hall. I'm a database consultant for software, focusing in on our database performance monitoring solutions. And today's presentation is a very specific one, and it's actually a request that we get quite often from our customers, really to do a very focused session on custom dashboarding and reporting. A very powerful feature of Foglight that really helps our customers extend the out-of-the-box capabilities. And a lot of customers want to take advantage of this feature, but some don't know exactly how to get started. So we take the opportunity to really walk you through how to create custom dashboards and a lot of additional capabilities really surrounding this specific capability. If you're customers of Foglight, I think you'll definitely find value in using this session as more like a training or tutorial-based walkthrough. Many of you folks are not customers of Foglight. Maybe you're evaluating the solution or just poking around and seeing what's out there. Hopefully you'll find that the features we're discussing today are valuable enough to encourage you to take a look at the software. Okay. Couple of keeping items. We are recording this presentation. If any of you do have to drop early or perhaps want to share the information with any of your colleagues, we will absolutely make the recording available. Also, I do want to encourage questions and answers throughout the presentation. We have muted everyone's line. There's a fair number of you on, and we don't want any background noise to interrupt us. But definitely take advantage of the Q&A functionality through WebEx. You'll see a Q&A window over towards the right. If any question that you have, feel free to submit it. I'll keep an eye on that as we go through the presentation. And then any questions that we don't get to during the presentation itself, I'll try to leave about 5 minutes at the end to just walk through any last questions that you folks do have. That being said, let's go ahead and get started. Agenda-wise, these are the things that we're going to cover. I'm kind of start with an end result, and I want to show you some of the custom dashboards that we actually make available through something called our database expansion pack. This is free, available to any Foglight user. You just have to install it, and I'll show you how to do that. And it'll kind of provide a foundation for some of the things that are possible with Foglight dashboarding and reporting. And go over what's available in this expansion pack, or to take a step back and walk through how some of these things are created. And go through a variety of custom dashboards, everything from a very simple single instance-based dashboard down some of the more advanced, what we call enterprise-type dashboards. Now, We'll go through probably 4 or 5 different use cases today, but really the point I want to get across is that the possibilities here really are endless. Foglight's collecting thousands of data points about all of your database servers. Any of them can be included in custom dashboards, and we really want you folks to be comfortable really creating dashboards that help you meet specific challenges that you have in your environment. Go through how to create dashboards. We're then going to talk about how to share dashboards. Dashboards are really useful for a couple different reasons. One is for you folks as either Foglight administrators or database administrators to look at data in a very particular way. But the real valuable part about dashboarding is how you can share these dashboards with other users in your organization. And share them in a very secure way. So we'll spend time going over how to do that. I'll talk about the scheduling and automation of dashboards. Right, so we just might need to present information out to our management team or out to a development group once a month, right? And to go about actually scheduling and automating the delivery of this data. Any questions and answers throughout? There's a WEX feature called Q&A. You should see a button in the upper right-hand corner if it's not already there. And feel free to ask any questions that you do have as we go through the presentation. All I'm going to do in slides here today, I'd like to take the opportunity to really go ahead and share out my desktop and start walking you through that agenda. So I'm going to go to my desktop here. This should come in. And so so you folks should start to see my desktop. If you haven't already, there is a full screen button in the WebEx console that should make it much larger on your displays, and hopefully that'll give you a good experience kind of watching what I'm walking through here. The first thing I want to do again, I kind of want to start with the result. All right, we've provided something that we call our database expansion pack. This is available to any Foglight customer, and it was really designed to really serve 2 different purposes. The first purpose and the first reason why we created this expansion pack was we wanted to showcase to our customers the power and flexibility of custom dashboarding. It really just is, here's what we can do. Expansion pack kind of took on a life of its own. We started to get requests from customers. We started to think about new and different ways to share data. And now, in addition to just being a showcase of Foglight capabilities, it's also become just a value-added feature of Foglight. So I very much encourage all of you folks to go ahead and take a look at this if you haven't already. I'm going to link where you can download it at the end of the presentation. If any of you are impatient and just want to go and grab it right now, if you just throw Database Expansion Pack into your favorite search engine, it should come up right away. And you can go ahead and navigate to our community site. On the site, there is a description of everything that's included in the Database Expansion Pack. And you'll see lots of dashboards here for both Oracle and SQL Server databases. And there's also some brief instructions on how to deploy the expansion pack into your environment. I'm going to show you how to do that here in just a second. And then also encourage any of you folks, if you have ideas or comments or questions, you can absolutely reply to this post and let us know what you think, or maybe let us know some other dashboards that you may be interested in seeing. We're always looking for ideas on additional items that we can include in this pack. Most importantly, there's a download link up here at the top of the screen where you can download the pack, and then where you can even watch this page so that you're updated when we do new releases of it. The pack is downloaded. The way that you're going to apply it into your Foglight installation, I'm back in the Foglight browser interface now. By administration dashboards, there's a section here for cartridges. Depending on the version of Foglight that you're running, this menu might look a little bit different. I'm currently on version 5.7.5. But your cartridges interface here, there's a button here to install a new cartridge. This is the same process if you're installing or upgrading the database cartridges themselves. In this case, we're just installing a custom cartridge. All right, so what we'll do is we'll point this interface to that file that we've just downloaded, click the install button. Generally, it's a few seconds or so, really shouldn't take much more than a minute. Once it's done, you occasionally will have to refresh the browser. Certain browsers behave a little bit differently. So if you don't see this database expansion pack menu over on the left, just refresh your browser and it should come into view. We now have additional dashboards and reports that are available on your Foglight installation. I would install it in your environment. I'm going to walk you through all of these. But a few highlights here, and these dashboards that have enterprise in the name, they're going to showcase information across all of your SQL servers, or Oracle servers, by the way. So if you wanted to do something along the lines of an enterprise SQL server performance summary, right? A list of all of our SQL Server instances with some KPI type information about how much CPU are they using, what is our page life expectancy, how many IOs am I performing, along with a trend graph showing that information over time. We have enterprise SQL Server inventory dashboard, which customers use to just say, I'm monitoring 500 instances of SQL Server, show me the version that each one is running on, show me how many CPUs each are using, and then maybe show me the high availability solutions that are being used on each of those SQL Server instances. Right. Enterprise database usage summary. This is a nice one for allowing us to see database by database in an environment. What is the sort of transactions per second that we're performing? Maybe you're looking for databases that are over or underutilized in capacity. This can help you find that information across all of your servers. We also have some dashboards here that they don't have enterprise in the name. These dashboards are going to be more instance specific. Right. Dashboard, and this we're just seeing information from one dashboard here, and we're showing low-level I/O information, as this is an I/O summary. You can see disk latency, both on read and writes. We can also see the queue lengths, and we can see some of our top Windows processes that are consuming I/O. So these are things that are available in our database expansion pack. Again, if we have time later in the presentation, I may go through some more of these for you, but I did want to at least start the presentation with just making sure all of you are aware that this is freely available and something that you can add to any of your Foglight deployments. See, by the way, that they're coming through more about product architecture and what we support and where you can run it. I'm going to leave those until the end. I'm expecting that more of them will come in. And I want to tackle them all at once. So definitely hold those questions, keep them coming. I just wanted you to know that I've got them, and we'll definitely get those later in the presentation. All right, so mention pack. Now I want to walk you through how some of these things are created. Okay, and with a really simple, what I just call single instance example. This is probably the most basic dashboard that we can build. Now to get started, over here on the right-hand side of the Foglight interface, you'll see there's a link in this action section that says create a dashboard. We're going to go ahead and get started. We present you with this basic wizard that we're going to use to just set up the dashboard template. Okay, I'll go through this fairly quickly. I'm not going to explain every single option and setting that you see, but I want to really walk you through how I create dashboards. Right? And this is a very common workflow that, although it might not include every little bit, every little toggle that you can choose, it includes the most common examples. So to choose this first option, it says use all data, and that's going to start me with a blank canvas. I always prefer to create my dashboards from scratch. I think it avoids any sort of conflicts that may come up down the road. And as you're about to see, creating of these dashboards is fairly simple. So starting with a blank canvas gives you the most flexibility. I'm then going to give my dashboard a name. We default here to just some generic my dashboard title, but definitely you'll want to give your dashboard a name that will help you understand what you're actually including. Right? So I'm going to call this dashboard webcast just so we know we created it on today's webcast, and I'll call it, you know what, let's just call it storage growth. Okay? Dashboards can be set up with an auto refresh rate. You know, this is more interesting, I think, as a parameter when we start talking about sharing dashboards and considering how they're going to be used. If you want the dashboard to refresh automatically in the background so that some people go ahead and leave it up and running, then you'll have that option here. Role concepts here, these are very important, again, when we talk about sharing, but I'm going to leave that until we get to the sharing section because I think it will become clear what we're talking about relevant and allowed roles when we actually talk about how these roles are used. Go ahead and click next. We have our layout options, and there are 4 different layout options that we have with a custom dashboard. 1, 2, and 3 column layouts, you can see by the picture here, are going to nicely organize everything into a grid structure. And then fixed size lets you actually put things wherever you want to put them. Right? Just a free-form canvas that you can drag things anywhere that you want. They can be any size that you want. You can overlap items if you want to. So it depends whether you want things to nicely organize themselves automatically or whether you want full control over the look and feel of your dashboard. You can choose the layout option that meets that criteria. For now, keep it very simple, single column layout. Now, if I have a blank canvas, okay, and only two different ways that we can add elements to our dashboard. The way I prefer is a drag and drop interface. All right, if you're dynamic, you have a bit more control over where things go. So in order to drag and drop, what I actually do when this window pops up is I click cancel. And then you see there's actually instructions right in the middle of my dashboard template now, encouraging me to drag views or data from the panel on the right. Okay? Make sure you collapse left-hand panel down to give us a bit more room. When I build these dashboards now, as you'll see, there's tabs over in this right-hand tray. And the two tabs that are most important here are data and views, and we're actually going to start here in data. The data browser. You have full access to all of the data that Foglight's captured and makes it available for dragging and including in your custom dashboard. The simplest example I can think of, so we're going to start at the databases entry here in the data browser. We're going to navigate into SQL Server. Actually, I've seen some questions come in about Oracle and DB2. I'm going to be walking through a few examples here. Most examples do target a specific database platform. Even if I'm showing you something on SQL Server, the process would be exactly the same on any database platform that you manage. We'll now into instances now, and you'll see I have a list of my SQL Server instances. My lab, I've got 6 of them. Depending on how many instances you have, you'll see them all here. If your list is extremely long, you'll actually see there's a handy search box right here where you can just start typing in a server name, and it'll bring you exactly to the instance that you're typing. Okay. So I'm going to expand open one of these instances. Now what we have are metric categories. The way I like to describe these. You'll see the names here, access methods, agent jobs, backups, buffer stats, cache manager stats, right, and so on. These are all of the different categories of metrics that Foglight's collecting, in this case about our SQL Server instances. Okay. So about, what sort of data do we want to include? Well, in this case, this is a storage growth example, and specifically looking at database storage, right? I could look at disk storage too, but in this example, I'm going to look at base storage. I'll go into my database summary metrics. And the trick here just says total size of data files. I know it's a metric, by the way, because there's no plus sign next to it. Right? At the end of the navigation path, we've gone into a metric category, and now I see the metrics that are available for custom dashboard. What I want to include is the total size of my data files. I'm going to drag that metric now over to the left. Let go. Foglight asked me a couple questions about what I want to include. Right now, in the case of this metric, I have 2 different options. Looks like I let it time out. Let me drag it back. I select a metric or select a property. Right? The metric is going to be the metric value itself. And 99 out of 100 times, that's what you're going to want to choose. You choose properties if you wanted to include something else other than the metric, like maybe the metric name you wanted to include in your dashboard, or timestamp of when the metric was collected, like that. So for them, though, choose select the metric, and that'll get you where you want to go. And have all different ways that we can now visualize this data, right? Those of you that are Foglight customers will recognize many of these visualizations, but there's all sorts of different ways that we can look at the data that I'm including. These charts are including trend information, right, over a user-definable time range. We have graphs and area graphs and bar graphs, so depending, again, on how you want to view the data, you have some options there. These, for the most part, show real-time information. So I'm interested in showing a trend of data, but you just want to see a singular indicator showing me, in this case, how big are my data files. You could use gauges, and again, there's a few different ways we can look at that data. And show raw data itself. So if you actually do the visualization of data, you just want the data that's captured, right? And the time it was collected and what the actual values were. You can even include raw data in your dashboards. So their own analysis on Foglight collected data. Maybe even just quickly export it to Excel and do your own data analysis on it. And that can include raw data in your dashboard, and we allow you to export. Let's just do a line graph. Right? So when I finish now, that's what I have. Right? Now, I can add additional dashboard elements inside of this dashboard. Right now, I'm looking at database growth, and again, it's over a definable time range. This time range selector at the top here is a common control across all of Foglight. So if I want to look at this over a longer term time range, I certainly can. And let's say I want to add some additional dashboard elements, right? Simple example I want to choose right now is I just want to also add in the size of my log files. So you have a second metric and drop it right on top of this existing graph. And the highlighting that you're seeing here just tells you where you're putting it. You'll see the second line to the graph. Right? So now I've got my data file size and my log file size on a trend graph, and in this case showing me information over the last 24 hours. Now, if I have another graph or another visualization of data, I also can just take any other data that I want. Let's grab the number of data files, drag that to the bottom. It's just so we have something slightly different to look at. Let's choose an area graph, and on top of that, I'll add the number of log files. So you can find data in the model over on the right, drag it over onto your dashboard, and decide how you want the data to look. A simple basic example, remember, this is a single instance dashboard, right? To kind of describe it for you, the instance name was hard-coded. Right? I went into the data model, I found an instance of SQL Server, I expanded that instance, and then as I was dragging data points and metrics onto my dashboard, it was always specific to that individual instance. Okay? Creating a dashboard, the instance that dashboard's data includes is never going to change. This is a good way to do it. Right? Making a dashboard to show you the question about worst performing queries, and the answer is yes, we can absolutely create a dashboard of the worst performing queries. And I'll show you how to do that later. But let's say that the dashboard we're creating, I want to show worst performing queries for a single instance of SQL Server. And I never want that instance to change for the purpose of this dashboard. Exactly how we would do it. Okay. Let's consider a second example, though, where we might want to be able to change the instance that we're showing data on. Because maybe the reason why we're building this dashboard, and I mentioned this earlier, maybe you as a DBA actually has a very specific way that you like to look at data. Right? There are 5 or 6 metrics that you like to analyze. Maybe it's a bummer that Foglight puts those 5 or 6 metrics on 3 different screens. All right? We do our best to organize our data efficiently, but we can't meet everyone's needs. So maybe you don't like the fact that you have to click on 3 or 4 different screens to get the 5 metrics that you're interested in. Right? What we can actually help you do is build your own dashboard where you can choose the instance of SQL Server, and the dashboard will run against that instance by creating what we call a parameterized dashboard. And so what's right below the data model here, you'll see a section that says parameterized input. And the parameterized input is take what you want to parameterize. Right? What do you want to actually choose when running this dashboard? This example, again, we want to choose a SQL Server instance. So take a SQL Server instance. It can be any of them, by the way. Which one you choose doesn't matter. And drag it into the parameterized input section. Right? When you're going to see this parameterized section expand, instead of seeing a hard-coded instance name here as the top-level reference, you just see almost like a placeholder. Right? This is a generic SQL Server instance, but you can see the data model below. And on my dashboard, using the metric data underneath this generic data instance placeholder. I'll actually even just create the exact same dashboard we did earlier. Let's look at total size of data files, drag that over to the left. Again, we'll do an area graph, and total size of log files, drop it right on top. Right? So the board here, the graph element is much the same. Where it's different, though, is back over on this General tab, you'll now see a section that says Page Inputs. And you have a pick list where you can pick a particular instance of SQL Server, and whichever the dashboard will render against that particular instance. So we parameterize this dashboard. Right, and really helpful, especially in that scenario like I was mentioning, where you just have a very particular way that you want to view data. You want all of those data points on the same screen. To be honest with you, maybe that new dashboard that you've built now becomes your entry point to Foglight. Right? All of the other detailed information that Foglight Foglight's captured. You want to go over page life expectancy. You want to go over page splits. You want to go over CPU utilization, and you want to look at disk latency. Right? Metrics you want to see, put them on the dashboard, parameterize it so you can pick the instance, and now you have your own Foglight view. Okay? So that's what we refer to as a parameterized dashboard in Foglight. Right? For a couple other options of that in a few minutes. What I'm going to do, though, is show you the third type of dashboard, which I refer to as an enterprise dashboard. Okay, we introduced this concept when I was going through some of the expansion pack boards that we make available. When I call a dashboard an enterprise dashboard, that just implies the fact it will show you information across all of your SQL servers. Before I show all of your SQL servers, I will take one step back because we do get questions all the time. What if I want to include 2 or 3 instances? Well, there's things stopping you from going into one of your SQL servers. Let's say go down to Buffer Manager here and grab page life expectancy. Right, drill left, again, as I've done before, select the metric, and let's just a simple line graph. And scrolling down in your data model, finding your second instance of SQL Server, going back same metric, and it could be dragging that over. 2 different instances reported in the same dashboard. Right? And in this case, when I go back to my General tab, switch this to 2 columns so I can see those things side by side. Right? And this one graph over to the right. So, and by the way, include multiple instances data in a same dashboard just by going through that first option we did, find the instance, find the data, drag it over, and if the data comes from 2 different instances, that's fine. Right? But way to create, again, what I kind of call enterprise level dashboards, which show data across all or a subset of instances. This data model is organized like a hierarchy. Right? You've got databases up here at the top level, you've got SQL Server into the second level, then we have instances at the third level, and we open up our instances, we see all of them. Right? This key allows to drag information over higher level. Right? Instead of dragging something over at the info, I'm going to move one level up by instances, and now drag that over. Right? I let go. Again, now the process remains almost identical to what we chose before. Let's see. I want to select the metrics. I want a graphical element of the data. And now you get the same data model that we've seen throughout. So I'm going to go down to database summary here. This is what includes some of the storage metrics that I've been using. I'm going to the total size of my data files. I'm going to put it into line graph. And notice already in the preview, we're seeing a graph line for each instance of SQL Server here. Okay, the previous 3, but we can include as many of them as we want. As step through this graph, we can do ordering and filtering. Right? I have 6 instances of SQL Server, so this graph is going to be pretty simple. What if you have 50 instances? Right? What you want to do is order this. So you can go down by your database summary metric. You can navigate down to the total size of your data files, then descending and limit this to your top 5. I'm going to show you effectively top 5 largest instances of SQL Server with their tended growth over where time range specified. So you have to kind of maintain a clean, graphical element that's not going to include 150 different lines. Another app here is to do dynamic filtering. Right, so your section in the middle, and you can filter off of anything that Foglight knows about your environment. Right, so filter by the database name. Maybe we have a naming convention where any database instance that runs SharePoint databases has share in the name. We can just type out some sort of dynamic filter. Now, this dashboard element is going to include any instance whose name includes that substring. Right? Or maybe I only want to include my large databases. I'll do a dynamic filter, again, selecting that database summary metric, going down to total size of data files. There, oops. There it is. And when I include the total size of my data files, I want to say is greater than 50 gigabytes. Now I'm actually going to include any server in this graph who's in 50 gigs worth of data files on it. Right? May not do from having 100 servers in the graph if there are 100 servers that meets that criteria, but it's another way that you could filter, do dynamic filtering. The option that you have down here at the bottom is more of a static filter where you just go off and check off, 3 or 4 different servers. Right? Even if you have 300 instances of SQL Server, but you want to create a graph that shows you the growth of 3 of them, pick off those 3, and now the graph element will include the 3 servers that you've selected. You can build, again, what I call an enterprise dashboard, where now we're looking at, I didn't do any filtering, so it's all 6 of my instances here, but I see their growth now, again, over whatever time range specified, because you can always change the time range that a dashboard element operates over. Now, one I want to show you at the enterprise level, we've talked specifically about what we call metric views. So the views here show you, trend graphs, area graphs, things along those lines. We can also include tabular views of data. Okay, so drag over my instances, maybe even do it right next to that graph, and I can create a table. We haven't yet, but now I want to do so. So I'll go ahead and create a table and check off the columns of the table. Command. I personally wish we did this by default, but we do give you a bit of flexibility here. If you go down in SQL Server case, and this is a little bit different on Oracle, but not tremendously so. I'll go into the version info metric category. This includes a lot of the structural information about my instance, including things like the server name, the SQL Server, the edition of SQL Server. Right, those are the first 3 columns in my dashboard. And the next columns are going to be the metric that I've actually already graphed. I just want to see it more text-based. So into my summary, the total size of data files. And I may have seen me glaze over this concept earlier. In graph, we just checked off the metric itself, and the graph takes care of trending. In it, we're displaying one value. If our dashboard operates over 7 days worth of information, the table is only going to include one metric value, in this case telling me the size of my data files. So what I do in my table is I tell Foglight, how do we want to aggregate that data? Right? And then in SQL querying, if I was doing this in a SQL query, I do like a group by, and then I decide the aggregate that I want to use in my select clause. Foglight, we are aggregating this data for you. You just have to decide which aggregation you want to include. Here is what you'll most commonly choose. The value is, again, that applies to the time range specified, in this case 7 days, and you just have to define, well, how do I want the aggregation to occur? Do I want it to be the average, the maximum, the minimum, and the different aggregations here? You can even include things like standard deviation if you're doing more of a statistical analysis on a specific metric. We want to include the maximum size of each instance of SQL Server, right? We're using this for storage budgeting. We're using this to determine how much space we need. So I don't want to use the average. I want to use the maximum so that I make sure I have enough space. Right, so we'll just go ahead and check that off. By the way, we have these documented. I'm not going to take the time to fully describe what they are here, but if you just Google Foglight metrics, you should find it. But to briefly summarize, current metric category is more or less the real-time value. What was the value the last time Foglight collected data? Metric value is the latest value that was collected in the time range specified. Right, so if between January 1st and February 1st, latest metric value would be whatever the last value was collected before February 1st, where you may be before or after that, depending on when the last time we collect the value was. Interpreting what those means, I know it's not a concept, but it is powerful in that you do have a lot of options and what metric values you can include. And again, we have documentation that describes it. So we want to include the maximum size of our SQL Server instances during the time range specified by my dashboard. Now, summary of the table, we can clean it up a little bit if we want, right? It's labeled which is the column heading max. Well, that doesn't tell me much. Let me say this is a max database size. Here, and we're going to get a summary of what it looks like. I can even do some more modification here. I see max database size, and I see the units in here, right? Maybe I don't like that. We got gigabytes and megabytes directly in the table itself. We have a concept in a Foglight table called a renderer, where you could, renderers just basically show how the data is going to look. There's a couple of options here which you can play around with. So depending on how you want your data to look, you can choose different types of renderers. Shows the default, you'll actually see that it actually normalizes the units. So in bytes and megabytes, it shows you them all in megabytes. If you raw data, right, it doesn't do any sort of aggregation on it. So there's a couple of ways that you can view data. Just play around with the renderers, and you'll typically find one that matches what you're trying to accomplish. And we have the same option to do ordering, dynamic filtering, or static filtering. But now we've got our table. Right. Show you about tables is which we can use dynamic sorting. More than just static representations of data. If you just want a simple table showing you the largest databases, you can sort by size, and now you've got that too. So some customers ask me questions about, well, how do I group together all of my SQL servers of the same version? Sort by the column, right? And how do I know what my largest databases are? Sort by that column. And these dashboards are living representations of data. They're not just static outputs. And create, again, what I call quote-unquote enterprise level dashboards, showing you data across multiple instances of SQL Server. Now, this thing I want to show, and this is related to storage growth. This is actually, I just wanted to address one of the questions that came through. Can I include things like top SQL queries? A slightly different process. When we started this process, we talked about we can include either data or views, right? Data is just that. It's raw data that Foglight's capturing. Views are predefined representations of data, right? Listing charts and graphs that you can just drop in, right? Because they've already been built. The purpose of what you mentioned around top queries, the way to do that is instead of dragging over a metric, and by the way, you can drag views over from the data tab, which is what we're doing in this case. Let me actually, just for if any of you are Oracle, to appease that, I'll actually show an Oracle example here. But again, the process would be the same for SQL Server. So I go over one of my instances of Oracle and select metric. Now I'm going to choose selective view. Right. And we'll see a list of views that are available here. I'm going to go down to Databases, Oracle, SQL Performance. You'll see there's a view here that's called Top SQL Statements. Right. It's specifically generated off of a feature of Foglight that we call Performance Investigator. Performance Investigator is a add-on to Foglight that provides very deep investigation of query performance. Right. So if customers want to include Performance Investigator information in their dashboard, one way to do it is to take advantage of the view that I'm showing here. Performance Investigator view, which shows our top SQL, and now we've got that in our custom dashboard. And we can add, additional dashboard elements to that if we want. Right? Go into the same Oracle instance, go down to activity, and include average latencies. So drag there and do our more traditional metric graph. And match elements. We've now got a top SQL over here on the left with some associated performance data. And then an activity graph over on the right showing me disk latency. And again, I can keep adding dashboard elements to this based on decide to include. And be parameterized as well. So again, just did with dashboard elements where I went into an instance and dragged it over. If I wanted to parameterize this view, these items out. By doing exactly what I did before, grab an instance of Oracle and drag it into this parameterized input section over this instance placeholder and the view, and do exactly what I did before, databases, SQL performance, top SQL, top worst performing SQL view, but back in the general tab, I can choose whatever instance I want, and it will render against that instance that I've selected. And you'll see the instance ID up here. So that top SQL type information into our custom dashboards. Just along this line, there was a question that just came in. Can you show stored procedures? In the SQL Server version of what I just showed, you'll actually see both a top SQL statements view as well as a top SQL batches view. SQL Server batches will include things like store procedures, functions, triggers, right, things along those lines, where statements include the individual statement. So if your goal was to show stored procedures or functions or triggers, choose the batches option. If your goal is to choose statements, choose the statements option. All right, some dashboards that I wanted to walk you through the creation of, right? We went through 4 or 5 examples, but really the possibilities here are, I mean, truly endless. There's thousands of metrics, dozens of views that we have. They can all be added to your own custom dashboards and really showcase data in any way that you see fit, right? Now, this with how I want to drive the next part of the agenda, I'm just going to go back and actually recreate a dashboard that we looked at earlier. I'm going to turn to a 1-column dashboard, go back to my data tab, go to server, grab all of my instances, do a metric view. And really, once you get the hang of this, it really is this quick. All right, I went through it in a lot of detail earlier, but once you get the motion down, you can create custom dashboards in minutes that really show you very sophisticated things. So my total size of my data files, again, this is across all instances of SQL Server. So that I'm going to include a table, version info, so I can grab the surname, and I can grab the edition, and then I can scroll up to date. And I can size of my data files, of my log files, and the number of them. Step over. And now click Finish. Okay, so here's now a dashboard that I've created. Right? Now, any dashboard that you build, right? If you are the creator of it, then have a My Dashboards folder over on the left-hand side of the screen. All right, so any you build, it's automatically saved in your My Dashboards folder, and you can bring it up whenever you want. The purposes of building dashboards is to actually share these with other users. Okay? The dashboard that I've built here, my storage growth dashboard, I want to share this with a storage administrator. Right? Maybe ask a question from them saying, you know, hey, Jason, how big are your SQL servers? Right? And if I request, I've either got to go into Foglight or I've got to go into some other process that creates a report, dumps it into Excel, I attach it to an email, and I ship it over to them. Right? It's 10 to 20 minutes every time I get the question. Wouldn't it be great if I could take this dashboard, share it with that storage administrator, and they can look at it whenever they want? Right? So the way we do that is through dashboard sharing. And I'm going to start by just going ahead and creating a login that I'm going to use for sharing. You have to do this depending on whether that user that you're sharing with is already a Foglight user or not. Right? So users in security management here, go to manage users, groups, and roles. Through this in a bit more detail than I might need to, but I want to show you the entire kind of life cycle of the Foglight security model. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a role. Right? We call our security model role-based, and that just refers to the fact that things can be secured based on the role that a user has. Okay, so I and create a role here, and I'm going to call this, you know what, just for the purpose, it looks like I already have one called Storage Administrator, so I don't want to reuse that. I'm going to call this Custom Dashboard View, right? I am not going to make this role a part of any of the out-of-the-box groups. I'm just going to click Finish. Right? So all I've done now is created a role, and it's called Custom Dashboard Viewer. What I was create a group, and is going to be called real same Custom Dashboard. What I'll call them group is going to contain all of the users that I want to be able to view custom dashboards. Okay? So I'm going to assign any of my out-of-the-box users to that group, but if users already exist and you wanted to put them into that group, just go ahead and check them off here. What to do is determine the roles that I want assigned at that group level. And that a user needs to view some dashboard is this console user role. So I'm just by saying, you know what, the console user role is the only role that I'm going to assign to this group. Right, we'll in a few minutes. Summarize, I've got my custom dashboards user group. Actually, I had a custom role, but I haven't used it yet. The role that I've used is this console user role. And I'm now going to create a user. Here, I'm going to call this webcast. Include my webcast user in that custom dashboard users group. Password. Will not for. There are options here at the user level where you can do things like give them a home page, right? If there's a single page that you want to show up every time that user logs in, by default, you can assign them a home page here. I'm not going to in this case. You can also determine a default time range, right? So this user is more often than not going to be looking at data over the last 7 days. We can default their time range to that. We can always change it. And then default refresh interval. Right, this user's view to refresh every 5 minutes as long as they leave the dashboard up. You could set the refresh interval there. Okay. So now just what I determined, right? I've got a webcast user as a part of my custom dashboard users group that only has the console user role assigned to it. I'm actually here. I'm going to have to log out of my current user context in Foglight. So I'm going to open up another browser and just link now with that webcast user that I created. Assuming, which I would hope I would. You can see because I have that console user role, I can log into Foglight. I'm able to log in, I didn't get any errors, but notice I can't see anything. They're shown to me over on the left-hand side of Foglight. There's not a single dashboard that I can click on and look at. And that's the role that I have assigned is the console user role. It allows me to use the console. It doesn't have to do anything or see anything. Okay? But what it allows me to do is view custom dashboards that are paired as what Foglight calls a portal. I'm going to go back to this dashboard that I've built. Right? I want to share this with my storage administrator. Outside, in this actions tray, if I go to the general tab for this dashboard, I can go into my properties link. Here, this is link to this page. URLs that I can use for sharing. And these URLs presents data in a specific way. The one that I like to use for sharing is the URL that we call a portlet. Right? And the reason to use that URL for sharing, I'm just going to go ahead and copy it. Let's assume that I'm emailing this link or me taking an IM window and sending it over to my storage administrator. All to do is paste the link into their browser. It's them for their username and password, right? And we created it. So let's just go ahead and log in as them. Get the dashboard, right? But note that's all that I can see. There's over here on the left. There are no drill downs that I can click on anywhere. There's no menu options over here on the right. So this provides very, I'll just call it a very safe way for sharing a dashboard that you have built with the user of Foglight without allowing them to see anything else. Okay. That just via the URL sharing, right? And mark this page as a storage administrator, and anytime I want to bring it up, I can go ahead and bring up this custom dashboard. But remember, if I can go back to the main Foglight interface, I can't see anything here. A very safe way to share custom dashboards without necessarily allowing them to see anything else. So I'm going to have 10 different custom dashboards that I want to share with this user. Right? One, I'll create the dashboard, send them the URL. They can bookmark the page and view it whenever they want. If 10 of them, sure, I could go create 10 dashboards, create 10 portlet URLs, send them all to them. They could bookmark every page and use them however they'd like. But we actually just want to take and create a menu structure for that user down the left-hand side so that they can log into Foglight and see the dashboards that I've made available to them. And the role assignments come in play. So for these, when I initially created the dashboard, but we're going to jump back to them. Well, I'm going to edit the properties of this dashboard. And if we go into allowed roles, this is set to all. When I did that portlet link in the browser as my custom dashboard user, I could view it because I said any user of Foglight can see this dashboard as long as they have the link. Right? Behavior, I can come in here and specify which Foglight roles I want to be able to view the dashboard. Right? If only those custom dashboard viewers and Foglight administrators, just check those off. If other user logs in that does not have those roles, they'll get an access denied message. Right? Here's relevant roles. Right? And use the term relevant because we're basically saying that this dashboard that we've built is relevant to the roles below. And the dashboard is relevant to that role means that it's going to show up in their left-hand navigation menu. So now I want that user, or I want my custom dashboard viewer user roles to be able to view, navigate, and browse for these dashboards. But I'll go ahead and off. I'm going to show you real quickly, this user that I've created does not have that role, so I still can't see it. Remember, it only has the console user role. Now I go back as my administrator user of Foglight, and I assign that user role at this group level. I'm going to, in addition to console user, I'm going to add some dashboard viewer. Right? So this group has two roles assigned to it. Log out or log back in. Let's see here. I could just head and log out. The dashboard now shows up for me. Our navigation tray, and I can go ahead and click through it and view it. 10 different dashboards that I want to make available to this custom dashboard user. Just make sure that each of those dashboards has a relevant role defined to it that user has a part of their Foglight group. Right? I see 10 links down here on the left, and I can log into Foglight and click on them however I want. Navigation structure here is our default. It's organizing them by the user that created the dashboard. Right? That'd be okay. Right? It's not the most intuitive navigation structure, but the best that we can do by default. If you wanted, by the way, to create your own menu structure, you can do that. If I jump back to my administration user, there's a configuration menu in the lower left-hand corner. Go to definitions, and this menu of definitions in the top actually maps to the menu structure that you see over here on the left. And I can create my own folder structure here by going to the bottom here, create folder structure, call it storage, dashboard. Again, enroll to my custom dashboard viewer. Have that storage here. I can take this dashboard that I've created, webcast. I can move it, copy it in that dashboard's folder structure. And now, back over here, you'll see a more organized folder structure that may be more relevant towards how you want to present the information. That's your own folder structures of dashboards available for sharing. And again, there's two different ways that you can do it. You can either do it through those portlet URLs in which case they can bookmark the page and bring it up whenever they want, or you can do that by creating a folder structure for them so that they can log into Foglight and see dashboards that you've made available. Last here, and then I'll just plow through as many of these questions as I can, is how can I schedule it and automate these things? Right? Dashboards are great because they're dynamic, right? They're living interfaces that we can view inside of the Foglight console. Right? Change the time range, and I can refresh the page, and they're always going to be relevant to the particular time range that I've specified. Right? Time, view Foglight data. We maybe don't want the real-time aspect. We want more of a scheduled, static output. And Foglight report comes in. Now, the thing about reporting is the process for creating them is near identical, even then where you can quickly turn a dashboard into a report. Right? Take this exact dashboard that I just built, the trend data file size, and it's a list of my SQL Server instances with related metrics. Now, I want to send this to maybe my manager once a month. Right? If I just report to you in the upper right-hand corner and create a new report, third option here, I'll very simply convert the dashboard that I'm looking at in a report that can then be scheduled and automated. Favorite process for building reports. First, build the dashboard. Get the data that you are comfortable including and simply convert it into your report format. Right? And if we want to, or at this point, now that it's in the report format, I can click the button that I want. Maybe I want this to be the last month instead of the last 7 days. Give this a name like my monthly summary. Output it in Excel or XML. In the report right now, you can click Next and Finish. To schedule and automate the report, you can check off the schedule box, include the email addresses that you want to deliver the report to. You can determine your schedule. And we should have out-of-the-box schedules, but you could, of course, add your own schedule if there wasn't one that met your out-of-the-box needs. Right? I'll just off right now just so you can kind of see how it looks, but if I click Next and Finish here, you'll see it's going to look a lot like a Foglight dashboard, the exact dashboard that we just built, but it's format now that can be scheduled and automated with the static representation of data. So that's reporting. It's the exact same process for creating them and even the ability to convert a dashboard into a report so that it can be scheduled and automated. That's what I had planned on showing. I'm going to jump back to the slides and start jumping you through some of the questions that I have here. While I do that, I'm just going to include the following. And these you all, by the way, so don't worry about writing them down. We're going to get these all to you. But of course, we'd like to make you aware that we do have a 30-day trial for the product. If any of you folks are not Foglight customers and would like to try it out on your own, we definitely recommend you take a look at the product, and we do support fully functional 30-day trials. The Danshin pack that we showed you at the beginning of the presentation, that can be downloaded via the following URL. You'll notice it is quite long, but if you go into Google and just type in database expansion pack, it's usually the first one that comes up. So it's another easy way to find it. We'd encourage you to take advantage of those reports and dashboards that we've made available. And I wanted to add for you is we have created a 3-part tutorial. Actually, it's not quite as detailed as we went into today, but it covers some real basic examples of creating custom dashboards. So if you'd like to take those as just maybe an action item where you want to walk through our tutorial and create your own first dashboard, you'll see some options here that we've made available through YouTube, both an introduction to custom dashboards, an example showing SQL Server growth, and then the process we just mentioned about converting a dashboard into a report. Definitely those would be your takeaways, and like I said, we'll make that available along with the recording. There's a couple questions about whether we're providing a recording, and we absolutely are, we'll make it available after the fact. So on these questions here, I may go a few minutes past the top of the hour if everybody's okay with that, but I'll try to get through as many of these as I can. A question about is Foglight available for Mac? So you will notice Foglight is a fully browser-enabled interface. So you access Foglight from any machine that has a supported browser on it, whether it's Windows, Linux, or Mac. Support all the major browser types: Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, and Safari. So Safari is a fully supported browser. We actually do support others as well, but those are the primary four. Now, Foglight runs on a Windows or a Linux infrastructure. So you can't install the Foglight application on a Mac computer, but if you install Foglight on a Windows or Linux machine, you can certainly access it from a Mac computer. Questions about differences between Spotlight and Foglight, and that's really a longer answer that I can do justice to here. But I will just say these are both tools in our portfolio. Spotlights on DB2, Spotlight on Oracle, Spotlight on MySQL, most of the Spotlights are really focused on real-time monitoring of an environment. Not a lot of history or trending or reporting in most of the Spotlights. Spotlight on SQL Server is a little bit different in that there's a 24/7 aspect to it. But the biggest difference is that the Spotlight family of solutions are one platform at a time, whereas I've shown you here in Foglight is a cross-platform and heterogeneous solution. Right? So again, hard to do justice to the question. They are both tools in our portfolio. All products that we have definitely serve specific needs in a very powerful way. If you'd like to reach out to us through your account manager and maybe determine what product is right based on what you're trying to accomplish, we'd love to have that conversation. Question about worst performing queries. About which databases are not being used. There is a way. There's actually a way to do that. We don't have that exact dashboard in our expansion pack. I'm going to jot a note down. That would be a good one to include possibly in the next iteration of the expansion pack. We're going to discover a little bit about what you mean by used. Does that mean are queried, or accessed, or read to, or written from? Because we'll probably determine, if and what we can provide. But we certainly do capture a lot of information at the database level, most specifically transaction rates, things like that. So if you wanted a global list of databases in your entire environment, maybe sorted by their transaction rates over the last 30 days, so you can find out which ones are being used least frequently, that's certainly something we could do, and I'll take that as a possible inclusion in our expansion pack. About anything to trend table growth. So actually, Foglight, we capture a lot of information about storage. We showed you some of it today. We are at the moment collecting information about the growth of every single table on every single database in your environment. So we can do it at the table space level. We can do it at the data and log file level. We can do it at the instance level, but not right now at the individual table level. We have items on our roadmap that might enable that down the road. We're working out the best way to do that efficiently without requiring too much storage. So, keep your eye out for future releases of Foglight that may enable that. But right now, at the moment, the lowest level that we can trend storage utilization on be either the data or log file in SQL Server or the table space or data file in Oracle. A couple other questions here. There's a couple questions about I/O activity. We have tons of metrics of I/O activity. So the generic question, can I create a custom dashboard showing I/O activity? Of course. We would need to figure out what sort of I/O activity you want to see, if it's disk read latency, write latency, transfer times, I/Os per second, amount of I/O, in kilobytes per second or megabytes per second. If it's lengths, we have all of those metrics available to us, so we can, of course, put them in a dashboard. We just need to encode exactly which ones you might need. The metric categories in each database platform labeled I/O, so look in there and you'll likely find something that you're interested in. Supporting Postgres. We actually do currently have a cartridge for Postgres. It's provided by a partner of ours. If you actually if you Google Foglight Postgres cartridge, I'm sure you'll find out, it can provide you access to it. So the current platforms that we support are SQL Server, Oracle, DB2, Sybase, MySQL, PostgreSQL, and then we also do have a cartridge for SQL Azure, Microsoft's database as a service platform. It is likely to grow in the near term, but those ones mentioned we currently support, and the custom dashboarding we've talked about, will each. yeah, there's a question here about leveraging other. You can. So the custom dashboarding interface is going to operate over data that Foglight has in its repository. That being said, you can pull your own custom data in Foglight database. The feature is called a user-defined collection. We don't have the ability to go over it today. We just don't have time. We can certainly consider that for a future webcast, or if you want to reach out to your account manager, we could set up a one-on-one and walk you through it. But look for the feature called user-defined collections. You can provide a SQL query to Foglight. We will run against your target instance and pull that data into the Foglight database. And then again, once it's in the Foglight database, you can include it in your own custom dashboards and reports. Right? If you connect Foglight to a database for free-form access, we can't currently do that. But once you pull data into Foglight, we can make it available in your custom dashboards. Past the hour, I'm going to try to wrap this up. Just any last questions that I want to answer? Finish with is about those user roles, and I apologize if I didn't get to all of your questions. I'll try to maybe summarize some responses in a blog post. Question console users, and specifically those user roles. Each of those user roles is defined in the Foglight documentation. If you go into documentation and just search user roles, you'll see there's a description of each role, out-of-the-box role, and what it can and can't do. To answer your specific question, the console user can't see alarms through any out-of-the-box dashboards because the console user can't see any out-of-the-box dashboards. If you include alarm information in an out-of-the-box dashboard, they would, or sorry, in a custom dashboard, they would be able to see it, but that would be you doing that to them. If you wanted a user to see the alarm-specific dashboards, you would have to give them some other role or customize something on top of that. Time today, I'm guessing, given the scope of questions, that this is certainly an interesting topic for you guys. Feedback coming. If you want to reach out to your account manager or whoever invites you to this webcast and let them know what they think, or if you have any ideas for future webcasts, we're all ears. Again, we're going to make the recording available along with these links that we have on the screen. So very much encourage all of you folks to give it a try, test it out, and let us know what you think. So with that, thank you for your time today, and I look forward to working with you in the future.